Welcome to the Wellness Lab Digest, where we help you to absorb powerful, life-changing insights from top wellness experts with our daily, bite-sized wellness podcast summaries. Each episode is packed with distilled, powerful takeaways to boost your health and well-being. To support this podcast, please scroll down on whatever app you're listening on. Ratings and reviews are helpful. Even better, just send the show to a friend. Or check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page, or simply click the Support the Show link.
Okay, so protein. Have you ever walked down a grocery aisle and been kind of bombarded by all those protein-packed products? You know the ones I mean, like promising to turn you into some kind of superhuman.
It's like protein is everywhere these days.
Yeah, and that is exactly why we're diving deep into this whole protein thing today. You sent over that YouTube video from ZOE with Dr. Federica Amati.
Oh, yeah, she's a nutrition expert.
Right. She's going to help us sort through all the hype and figure out, what's actually true.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about protein.
Totally. Honestly, I used to be pretty clueless about protein myself, but Dr. Amati really breaks it down, in a way that's easy to understand.
She starts with the basics. What even is protein? It all comes down to these things called amino acids. They're like tiny building blocks, right? And they create all the different proteins in our bodies. And those proteins, they're responsible for pretty much everything. Our skin, hair, muscles, bones, even our immune system.
It's amazing to think about over 10,000 different proteins in our bodies.
Right. It's incredible. Now, out of the 20 amino acids that make up these proteins, 9 of them our bodies can't make on their own. So we have to get them from the food we eat. Those are considered the essential ones.
So big shout out to our livers for making the rest of the amino acids. They're working hard.
For sure. Okay, so now the big question. Do we really need all that extra protein that everyone seems to be talking about?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
Well, the recommended amount is actually only 0.83 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Hold on, let me get my calculator. Okay, so for someone weighing, let's say, 130 pounds, that's roughly 50 grams of protein per day.
Exactly. But here's the thing. In the US and UK, people are eating way more protein than that.
Really?
Yeah. In the US, the average is about 100 grams a day. That's almost double the recommended amount.
So wait, are you saying that if I'm eating a generally balanced diet, I'm probably already getting enough protein?
Most likely, yeah. There are some exceptions, of course. Growing kids, pregnant women, people over 70, and elite athletes might need a bit more. But for the average person, you're probably good.
That's good to hear. But it makes you wonder why there's this massive push to eat more protein. I mean, it seems like every food on the shelf these days is bragging about its protein content, from bread to cereal to even ice cream.
You're right. It's hard to escape the protein craze. But here's the thing. We can actually get all the protein we need from just whole foods.
Okay, so what kind of meals are we talking about here? Give me some examples.
Okay, well, think about a simple bowl of yogurt with nuts and berries. That can easily have over 30 grams of protein. Or how about 2 eggs with some butter beans, tomatoes, and spring onions? That's another 30 grams right there. Or a small salmon fillet. That's around 30 grams in protein.
Wow, that's way more protein than I would have thought.
Right. And for those who are plant-based, there's no need to worry. Plants are packed with protein, too.
My friend's 16-year-old son is going to be thrilled to hear that. He's convinced he needs to eat meat to get taller.
Tell him to relax. A cup of cooked lentils has around 18 grams of protein. And actually, there's some good evidence that a plant-based diet, a diet high in plant-based protein might be even better for us than one high in animal protein.
That's good to know. Okay, so we've established that we can get plenty of protein from whole foods. But what about all those protein supplements we see everywhere? Are they really necessary?
That's a great question. Let's take a closer look at protein supplements and see what Dr. Amati has to say.
Okay, so let's unpack this protein supplement thing. I mean, they're everywhere, but are they really all they're cracked up to be?
Well, it's important to understand how these supplements are even made.
Right.
Let's take a chocolate protein bar, for example. It doesn't just magically appear as a protein powerhouse.
Right, I've always wondered about that.
So it starts with extracting protein from various sources like eggs, peas, soy, or even cow's milk. And this process involves a whole bunch of industrial steps to isolate and concentrate the protein.
Sounds complicated.
Yeah.
So not something you could easily whip up in your kitchen.
Definitely not a DIY project. And here's the catch. Those protein bars and shakes, They aren't just pure protein. They often come with a whole laundry list of added ingredients.
Like what kind of ingredients?
Think added sodium, sugars, thickeners, emulsifiers, and just a bunch of other additives. These are usually thrown in to make the products, taste better, smell more appealing, because let's be honest, pure protein doesn't always have the most exciting flavor profile.
That makes sense. But all those extras kind of make them sound like,
Ultra-processed foods.
yeah.
You got it. And we've talked about the potential downsides of ultra-processed foods in previous deep dives, and a lot of these protein supplements, they fall squarely into that category.
So even though we might be getting that extra protein, we're also getting a whole bunch of other stuff that might not be so good for us.
Exactly. It's a trade-off worth thinking about, especially since the evidence is increasingly pointing to a link between ultra-processed foods and a whole bunch of health issues like heart disease and even early death.
Okay, that's definitely something to consider.
Mhm.
It seems like Dr. Amati is saying that whatever benefits we might hope to get from that extra protein, they might not be worth the risks.
Right. She makes a great point. Think about that chocolate protein bar again. Sure, it might have added protein, but it's probably also loaded with sugars, oils, and just a ton of other ingredients that you wouldn't normally add to your food if you were making it yourself.
I've definitely noticed that the ingredient list on some of those protein bars can be incredibly long and confusing. It's like trying to decipher a chemistry textbook.
Exactly. And sometimes the actual protein content isn't even that impressive. You might be paying a premium for a product that only has like a small amount of protein. For example, some high protein ice creams, they only have like 10 grams of protein per serving.
So you'd have to eat a ton of it to get a decent amount of protein. And in the meantime, you're consuming a lot of other questionable ingredients.
Exactly. You could easily get the same amount of protein from like a cup of edamame beans, which would be way more nutritious and less processed.
It's like this whole protein craze has made us lose sight of the importance of real whole foods.
Right, that's a great point. And it brings up another important question. If these protein supplements aren't necessarily the healthiest choice, why aren't they more regulated?
That's a good question. You'd think there would be pretty strict regulations in place for products making, such bold claims about health and nutrition.
You would think so, right? But surprisingly, the regulation of protein supplements is pretty lax.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's a bit unsettling. So Dr. Amati explains that supplements in general aren't as tightly regulated as food or medicine. This means that manufacturers can basically make claims about their products, about the protein content or the benefits, without having to actually prove them.
So we're basically just trusting these companies, to be honest.
Pretty much. And unfortunately, a 2017 FDA study found that trust might be misplaced. They inspected over 650 dietary supplement production facilities, and they found violations in more than half of them.
Wow, that's concerning. What kind of violations are we talking about?
The most common issue was a failure to ensure the purity, strength, or composition of the final product.
So some of these products might not even contain the amount of protein they claim to have.
Exactly. It raises serious questions about the safety and the quality of these products. But yet, despite these concerns, the market for protein supplements just keeps booming.
It's almost like we've gotten caught up in this protein hype without fully understanding the potential downsides.
Right. It's easy to get swept up in the marketing and the idea that we need more protein to be healthy or lose weight or achieve our fitness goals. But the truth is, for most of us, that's just not true.
So what does all this mean for our bodies?
Yeah.
If we're consuming all this extra protein, especially from these supplements, how does it actually affect us?
That's a really important question, and it's one that Dr. Amati addresses directly. Let's dive into the impact of high protein intake on our bodies. Everything from our gut health to our metabolism.
Okay, so we've talked about what's in these protein supplements, but now let's get into what happens when we consume all that extra protein, especially, the heavily processed kind.
Yeah, so one area Dr. Amati highlights is the impact on our gut microbiome. When we eat a lot of protein, a lot of it ends up undigested, right? It just sits there in our gut. And that can mess with the balance of our gut bacteria.
I've heard a lot about the gut microbiome these days. What's the big deal with our gut bacteria anyway?
Well, they play a much bigger role in our overall health than we used to think. Imbalances in our gut bacteria are linked to all sorts of problems. I mean, everything from, digestive problems like nausea and constipation to even more serious stuff like inflammatory bowel disease and even mental health.
Wow, so it's not just like an upset stomach. Taking care of our gut bacteria is really important for our overall health.
It really is. And that means being mindful of, how much protein we're actually eating and where we're getting it from.
Okay, that makes sense. So another thing I've always wondered about is the connection between protein and weight loss. It seems like every other ad is promising like a leaner body if you just up your protein intake. Is there any truth to that?
Well, there is some truth to it, but it's not as simple as those ads make it seem. Protein does help us feel fuller for longer, which, that can be helpful if you're trying to manage your calories. And our bodies do use more energy to break down protein compared to carbs or fats. So, in that sense, yeah, protein can give your metabolism like a little boost.
So there is a connection, but it's more nuanced than just eat more protein, lose more weight.
Exactly. And here's another thing. The type of protein matters a lot. Like a protein bar that's loaded with sugar and additives, it's not going to have the same effect as, say, a plate of lentils or a piece of fish.
That's what I was thinking. It seems like the quality of the protein is just as important as the quantity.
Absolutely. And there's one more thing to consider when it comes to protein and weight management. When we eat protein, our pancreas releases insulin,
Right.
which is a normal process. But if we're constantly overloading our bodies with protein, it can actually increase our risk of insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance, that sounds serious.
Yeah, it is. It's a metabolic disorder that can, increase your risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and a bunch of other health problems.
Okay, so maybe weight loss isn't the best reason to load up on extra protein. What about muscle building? I used to think I needed to chug a protein shake after every workout.
Oh, that's a myth a lot of people fall for. So while protein is important for muscle growth, especially when you combine it with resistance training, you really don't need to go overboard. Eating a balanced meal with, 20 to 40 grams of protein is plenty to support muscle recovery and growth.
Oh, no need to force down those chalky protein shakes.
Nope. Your body is perfectly capable of absorbing protein from regular meals throughout the day. It's not like there's some magical window of time, right after your workout when you absolutely have to get your protein in or else.
That makes me feel so much better. I always hated those shakes, but I thought I had to drink them to see results.
It's a common misconception. Think about it this way. Our ancestors didn't have protein shakes after they, hunted for their food. And they managed to build some pretty impressive muscles.
That's a great point. It really puts things into perspective. So basically, we don't need to stress about getting extra protein, especially from those processed supplements.
Right. Most of us can easily get enough protein from a balanced diet with plenty of protein-rich whole foods. Things like lentils, beans, nuts, seeds, eggs, fish, yogurt, the list goes on and on.
Well, you've definitely given me a lot to think about. I'm inspired to trade in those processed bars and shakes for some delicious whole food meals. I might even have to do a little protein bar purge in my pantry.
I think I might join you on that one. This whole deep dive has really made me reconsider those protein bars that I have stashed away.
All right, listeners, we want to hear from you. What's your relationship with protein like? Have you ever felt pressured to consume more than you probably need? What are some of your favorite ways to get protein from whole foods? Share your thoughts. We always love hearing from our amazing listeners.
Absolutely. Keep those questions and comments coming.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep on diving deep.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Lab Digest. If you receive value from the podcast, I have 3 asks of you. 1, share the show on social media with your friends and tag the show at the Wellness Lab Digest on Instagram. Number 2, please leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening on. And last but not least, please let me know what topics you would like us to cover in the future. You can contact me at empoweringmen.org/contact. And right now we have a free ebook to get you started on your wellness journey as well. That's empoweringmen.org/contact. To support this podcast, check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page or simply click the Support the Show link.